Hey, what is going on, everybody? How are you all doing today? I hope you all are having a wonderful and fantastic day today, and if not, hopefully you all will have a better tomorrow. So, I wanted to talk about some ways that the Grimm can be improved, some suggestions that can help benefit the Grimm in the future and make them seem to be more threatening again, as well as some suggestions that can really improve the Grimm for the future. So, sit back, relax. I hope you all enjoy. Let's go ahead and get started. So recently, I talked about boss level Grimm and how some of them are good, but some boss level Grimm just aren't up to par, and they're not as good as other boss level Grimm we've seen, or even some Grimm that aren't even boss level Grimm. And I've talked about some of the issues with them, and one thing I do want to take a look at is how to improve Grimm in general, because the Grimm have had their issues as of late. Now, while we've seen some great Grimm like the Apathy, we've seen some good Grimm like the Grimm Wyvern, which was actually a very good boss Grimm. I thought the Nukalave wasn't bad, and then there's of course the Seer Grimm, which also helps Salem be able to control the Grimm. And these are actually some pretty good Grimm, but while we've seen some of these really good Grimm, some Grimm just haven't really been up to par. Some Grimm just haven't been as good, whether it either comes to their concept designs or whether it comes to their powers. And I really wanted to go over that because at the same time, not only have some of the boss Grimm and some Grimm in general just not been as good as some other Grimm we've seen, but some Grimm that may have seemed more fearsome or powerful back in the day when it comes to volumes 1 through 3, they have been outmatched by future installments of Grimm that we've seen, and the Silver Eyes really keep these Grimm in check and don't make them feel as fearsome as they would. And so while in the first 3 volumes of RWBY we did see some very interesting Grimm, but nowadays a lot of them have either been just outranked by other Grimm that are just by far better, and that doesn't even just mean boss Grimm, this means just some other Grimm that could be even lower tier. And considering that there's that problem, like I stated, the Silver Eyes, well, a lot of these Grimm fall flat now, and that's kind of a problem, because the Grimm were originally meant to feel threatening, they were meant to be a threat, but the danger level has really decreased over time. It's diminished further and further, and one big problem is, if you think about it, the Apathy, they were a great thing. Now, that's not the problem, but the problem was Pladzilla at the very end of the volume. While it was a boss level Grimm, it just didn't have that level of threat that they could have really provided for it as a boss level Grimm. And I really went into that as well. And so after I was thinking about the boss level Grimm, I thought maybe there could be some ways that could really improve the Grimm, that could make them feel threatening or very dangerous again. And I came up with some ideas that might be able to actually improve the Grimm for the future. Even with RWBY having the Deus Ex Silver Eyes powers, there could be a way to still make these Grimm very threatening, and I would actually like to kind of go over some of these ideas that could actually improve the Grimm for the future. And, well, one of them we are going to have to start off with is talking about the Silver Eyes. Now, I did bring up how I think that the Silver Eyes should be nerfed. And I say this because with Silver Eyes just being able to I-beam anything or freeze anything, and then just allow the Grimm to either die off immediately or be frozen and then can still be taken care of later, well, I think that really hurts the effectiveness of the Grimm. And since that really hurts them, one thing that they could do is, as I talked about, by nerfing the Silver Eyes, they could make it to where there was a limit. There could be like an aura drain, temporary blindness, maybe even taking off the years of the user's life. There could be some interesting ways that they could try to do this. Or Maria could just tell RWBY that, hey, I forgot to mention that the Silver Eyes, yeah, they have a lot of power, but there's a drawback, and that could be the use of the Silver Eyes, because it could put strain on the user if they use it too much. But here's another suggestion of how to nerf the Silver Eyes to make the Grimm better, is by the battle between Cinder, Neo, and RWBY that may occur in Volume 7, considering it's looking more and more like it will happen. But what could happen is RWBY could lose the fight, yet still survive. Nobody has to die in this fight per se, but what could happen is Cinder or Neo could take one of RWBY's eyes. They could destroy one of her eyes, and if you think about it, that'd be kind of like some foreshadowing, like with Maria, about how she lost her eyes because there were others trying to look for her, and that was because of her Silver Eyes. And then there's also the fact that Tyrion did make the statement back in Volume 4 to Cinder, an eye for an eye, which I think in the writing perspective, this would be very good foreshadowing. And that build-up could actually work. It would actually be good on the writing perspective, and it would basically state that, hey, look, with Ruby losing her eye, it goes back to what Tyrion said all the way back in Volume 4. So that would be really neat if they did something like that. And that would be a way to really, I guess, buff the Grimm without even really having to touch them. But at the same time, here's another idea that I have that doesn't even affect the Silver Eyes. So let's take a look at this. So if you think about a lot of the Grimm, I talked about how some of them have utility, like the Grimm Wyvern, for example, about how it can just spawn other Grimm that can fight, right? Well, considering that there's that, here's another idea. Several Grimm could actually fight alongside each other. So think about it like this. You have a Grimm Wyvern, you have a Nevermore, and you have Griffins. They could be like an Air Force, for example, which would be really cool, because if somebody tries to attack the Wyvern, maybe the Nevermores could come in and help. And if you think about it, it would be like this. So the Wyvern would be the boss. You have the Nevermores be like the mini-boss that could be the guardian to the Wyvern, so that if something does actually go after the Wyvern, the Nevermores could take care of that. And then kind of more like the Grimm that would be like the lackeys, or the lower tier would be the Griffins, and they could come in to protect the Nevermores, which would show the intelligence of the Grimm, because if you remember, the Grimm, the older they are, the smarter they become. And I think this would be a great way to show how the Grimm could be in unison with one another if they had this sky fleet that could protect one another. I think that would be a pretty awesome idea. Not only this, but they could also have a ground fleet. So think about Beowulfs, for example. Now, they really just kind of come in packs like animals. So let's think about this. So while the Beowulfs could be just kind of like ground fodder in a sense, okay? You have the Grimm that are spawning from the Wyvern, which would be more ground fleet to actually help out with the Beowulfs. So that would be pretty cool. So having them fight in unison. And then there could be other Grimm that could come into the situation, like the Grimm Geist. We only saw this Grimm one time. But if you think about it, with it being able to possess objects and make bodies out of it, think about how much of a problem that could actually cause and mischief. I think this would be a great combination, because if you think about it, the Geist could be kind of like a mini-boss on the ground. Now, while you have the Beowulfs, the Grimm being spawned from the Wyvern, and the Geist, you would need some form of utility for them, some form of defense. Well, I think the Grimm that they could use for this would be the Apathy. I think the Apathy could be the perfect example for a great utility strike. Because think about it like this. The Apathy Grimm, since they drain one's willpower, these Grimm could make it very hard and very difficult to fight against the Grimm on the ground. Now, while they may not be powerful, they make up for this with their willpower, and I think that this would be a great Grimm to throw into the mix to just throw in more utility and more defense. And then, if you think about it, what we could actually see, which I think this would be a cool one, is bring back the Goliaths. We haven't seen them since Volume 3, but we didn't really see them do anything other than go and try to attack Beacon. That's all we really did see, but we never saw them attack. We never saw what they're capable of. And I think this would be an excellent way to show off the abilities of the Goliath, as well as their intelligence, because they could lead all of the ground forces of Grimm. I think this would be an excellent idea. But I have one more suggestion that would be completely brand new. Okay, so here's an idea for a concept. Say you have a Grimm that is very brute-like, that's very huge and bulky. Say it's got huge buff arms, but it's got small legs. But it has tons of power, but at the same time, it's a very slow Grimm. So it's not very mobile, but it has tons of power. And say this Grimm has an ability that it can power up itself and its allies. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's cool and all that it would have power, but with not having much mobility, that already sounds like a problem here. But here's another idea, and this could show the intelligence of the Grimm. So think about it like this. So while there's this big buff brute Grimm that could increase the power of itself and other Grimm, what if there was another Grimm that could work alongside this Grimm that is very fast, but it doesn't have much power, and it has the ability to increase the speed of its allies as well as itself? Could you imagine these two types of Grimm within unison to one another? So one that can increase power but doesn't have much speed, but yet one that has tons of speed but doesn't have much power, but yet they could unify as a force to increase their speed and attack together to make them a very terrifying force of Grimm. That would be very threatening to have to try to deal with. I think this would be a very superb idea if they were to use a Grimm with these abilities. But that's just my opinion if they were to come up with stuff like this. But anyways, let me know what you think down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did enjoy, hit the video with a like. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Share this video with your friends if you found this informative or useful. And follow me on Discord. Link is in the description down below. But anyways, I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful and fantastic day today. And remember, if today was not a good day, tomorrow could always be better. Take care of yourselves and everyone around you. And have yourselves a good one out there, everybody.